Farewell to our greatest games. Team GB heads home with a record medal haul. The Rio Olympics drew to a close last night with a spectacular ceremony. Downing Street pledges no limit on honours for Team GB, which won 67 medals.
To have another generation of young competitors coming through that are the best in the world, I think is a really strong message.
Also tonight, prisons within prisons to stop convicted terrorists radicalising other inmates.
Almost 650,000 ballot papers sent out to Labour members voting in the leadership contest.
And a nation's pride, the families preparing a special welcome for the Rio superstars.
Give them a hug and just say, you're my legend.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale and Alistair Stewart.
Good evening. The Prime Minister is promising a string of honours for Britain's Olympic heroes, saying there's no limit on the number that could be given out. Theresa May's spokeswoman said it had been an amazing fortnight and those responsible should be rewarded.
The Queen also sent her warmest congratulations to the stars of Britain's most successful modern Olympics. And having taken part in a spectacular closing ceremony last night, they are now preparing to head home. From Rio, here's our sports editor, Steve Scott.
Rio finished as it started, saying farewell in the only way it knows how, with a giant party. The colour of carnival accompanied by an irresistible samba soundtrack. A city celebrating, knowing it had staged a memorable games despite the countless challenges it faced when it welcomed the world here a few weeks ago. Partying as hard as anyone, Team GB, and why not? Their astonishing success surprised even them. Last night, as they have throughout their stay in Brazil, leaving an indelible footprint. Most pleasing for the man in charge is that a team with 180 fewer athletes than 2012 has achieved such success across a range of sports.
We, as in Great Britain, and they, the athletes, they've medalled in 19 of the sports that we've competed in. In London, we only medalled in 17 sports. From those 540 odd athletes. So to do that from that smaller cohort has been nothing short of exceptional.
Adam Peaty got Britain's golden ball rolling, securing the first medal here. What's more, in a world record time. The inspiration it provided coursed through the rest of the team. Max Whitlock admitted as much after winning Britain's first ever gymnastics gold, then incredibly bagging another on the pommel horse just 2 hours later. The magical moments kept coming. The Brownlee brothers conquering the grueling triathlon, their mutual bond both memorable and touching. The national anthem was all but on loop in the velodrome. The golden couple, Laura Trott and Jason Kenny, now have 10 Olympic titles between them. They say they have each other to thank for that stunning success which will not end here in Rio. But perhaps Mo Farah caps them all, his determination after a setback that would have broken many en route to defending 2 titles and becoming Britain's greatest ever track and field athlete. Seb Coe says Britain now unquestionably leads the world when it comes to putting together an Olympic team, and he believes the benefits are widespread.
To have another generation of young competitors coming through that are the best in the world, I think is a really strong message for young people that want to take up sport from all sorts of backgrounds.
As the party wound down, Rio handed over its Olympic responsibility. Japan's Prime Minister even emerging as computer game character Super Mario, perhaps giving us a glimpse of what to expect. The skyline then filled with a firework flourish as these troubled but thrilling games said goodnight and goodbye to the watching world. Steve Scott, ITV News, Rio de Janeiro.
So this then is how the final medal table looks. Great Britain finishing an incredible second ahead of China for the first time. Team GB even eclipsed the success of the London Games, with Britain becoming the only host nation to win even more medals at the next Olympics.
And work is already well underway on not just repeating that success, but perhaps even beating it in Tokyo in 4 years' time. Our sports correspondent Ian Payne reports on the planning and funding behind the next generation of Olympic stars.
67 medals over more than 20 different sports, made possible by superb athletes, backed up by money made from the national lottery. But the planning for the next Olympics is well underway.
We started our planning for Tokyo 6 months ago, as have the sports, okay? So we know roughly, and they know more precisely, what their plans are for Tokyo.
At Rio, in the main, success came with money. The top 3 funded sports at the Olympics, rowing, cycling and athletics, netted Team GB a total of 24 medals. That's more than a third of our overall total. While there were no medals at all for 3 of the least funded sports, fencing, archery and weightlifting. But the shock success for Team GB came in swimming. Despite funding being slashed by 21% since London 2012, the team brought home 6 medals. But our funders are looking even further ahead than Tokyo. This is 17-year-old Sabrina Sinner, not an elite athlete, so no lottery funding, but she gets money from the charity Sports Aid because she has potential.
Sports Aid has helped me so much. So from just funding, sort of doing things like paying for my strength conditioning, to travelling all over the country for competitions, up until just having the moral support of knowing these people support you and believe that you can do it, that makes a lot of difference.
Jess Ennis-Hill used to benefit from a Sports Aid grant, as did gold medal swimmer Adam Peaty and gymnast Max Whitlock. In fact, Sports Aid alumni won 46 out of the 67 medals.
We're recognising a generation of very, very talented young people that become that Team GB, and I think the single biggest thing we can do, which we owe to every next generation, is make sure they've got the opportunity to excel and achieve their personal bests.
Rio may be over, but thoughts have already turned to Tokyo and beyond. Ian Payne, ITV News.
So let's then go straight back to Steve Scott in Rio. Now, Steve, you've been there from the very start of the Games. What is your reflection then on Rio 2016?
Mary, I think it's been very successful when you think about the concerns and the challenges faced before the Games, the Zika threat. Would the transport links be ready? Would the venues, in fact, be ready? The compromises that had to be made because of the recession here. I think in the end, Rio's got through it and put on a pretty good show, apart from the fact some of it was in front of half-empty venues. But if you're British, you cannot escape the sensational sporting performance by the British team. Not just the number of medals, but the fact that Team GB finished second in the table ahead of China, and the fact that they won these medals across such a wide range of sports. I think in sporting terms for Britain, Rio is going to take some beating.
It is indeed. Steve, in Rio, thank you.
Here, an exclusive survey by ITV News has highlighted prison officers' concerns over the radicalisation of inmates in England and Wales. Most said that they had witnessed prisoners spreading extremist ideology, but didn't feel they had the support to stop it.
Well, today the government announced new measures to tackle the problem, including isolating extremists in special units. Here's our security editor, Rohit Katru.
Anjem Choudhury, Britain's Islamist recruiter-in-chief, is now in prison.
Today we find
But should he be in a prison within a prison to prevent him from mesmerising a new audience? Jail can act as an incubator for extremism. And so a government review published today has concluded that some preachers should be held in specialist units separated from the rest of the prison population.
We cannot have safe prisons. We cannot have prisons which are reforming inmates when we have these serious problems with extremism.
There's a familiar path from jail to jihad, taken by Richard Reed, the airline shoe bomber, radicalised while serving a sentence for muggings. Jamal says he resisted that route after he was targeted in Belmarsh following a conviction for fraud.
Walking around the exercise yard, they come up to you and give you words of encouragement. You're going to get through this. We're all in this together. So there's a sense of camaraderie, and this sense of camaraderie is what they then use to manoeuvre against you.
It's rare to hear from serving prison officers, but 132 responded to an ITV News survey. 90% said radicalisation is a growing problem in prisons and that they'd heard extremist views from inmates. Many officers said segregation was the solution.
I believe that any prisoner with hardcore Islamist tendencies should be isolated away from the general population with others of the same thoughts.
Staff are too scared to tackle extremist issues due to prisoners making racial complaints.
Employ staff who specialise in this area to enhance staff skills to recognise signs of radicalisation.
But there are risks. The Maze prison in Northern Ireland, where Republicans and Loyalists were housed in different blocks, is cited as an example of the failure of separation.
Would it create some sort of iconic status for the prisoners that are held in these units? And so radicalisation will reach out if they achieve that iconic status in these systems.
But the greatest fear is that extremist units might intensify the problem rather than end it. Rohit Katru, ITV News.
A British national has been killed and another wounded in the Iraqi city of Ramadi while they were trying to defuse a bomb. The victims were working for a US company clearing mines in the area. Thousands of explosive devices and booby traps were left by Islamic State when the city was retaken in December.
And here the former Radio 1 DJ Chris Denning has pleaded guilty to 21 historical child sex offences as part of a police investigation into a long-running youth disco. The 75-year-old admitted to abusing 11 children, some as young as 8, between 1969 and 1986.
Now, ballot papers are being sent out to hundreds of thousands of Labour Party members as the bitter leadership contest enters its final stages. There is still huge support for Jeremy Corbyn among the grassroots, but challenger Owen Smith insists that he is the one who can heal the party's divisions. From the campaign trail, our political correspondent Paul Brand reports.
For weeks we've known who's on this ballot paper. Now Labour supporters finally begin marking their crosses, choosing the face and future of their party. Today Owen Smith was on local turf at Tonorefal Miners Club in South Wales. This home support now boosted by much needed backing from the Scottish Labour leader as well as the Mayor of London.
You told me a couple of weeks ago that you are the underdog in this race, and as the ballot papers go out today, that doesn't seem to have changed, does it?
Well, I'm always going to be the challenger, obviously. Jeremy's the incumbent and he won a large majority last time round, but I'm very confident that we're making real inroads. I think things like Sadiq Khan and Kezia Dugdale coming out for me in the last few days is indicative of a wider shift in opinion in the party.
He needs to win over at least half of the 650,000 Labour members and supporters who can vote in this contest, including 129,000 people who paid £25 just to take part. They'll vote up until September the 21st, with the result 3 days later. The test of the winner will be seats like Gower. It came down to 27 votes here in the general election. Now it's party members who are finally split over who'd win it back for Labour.
What is it you think that Jeremy Corbyn hasn't got?
He just hasn't got that that oomph, if you like, that people can relate to.
I'm very much about party unity. I've played rugby for the best part of 20 years. We've had some questionable captains, we've had some very good captains.
So you think people should stay loyal to Jeremy Corbyn because of that?
I think they should have stayed loyal to him in the first place, yes.
It is still Jeremy Corbyn drawing the bigger crowds as he aims for a bigger majority too.
We know that Jeremy needs an absolutely huge mandate, and part of that reason is so we can actually negotiate with the Shadow Cabinet to say, actually, let's have a peace deal here.
But for now, Owen Smith's determined to cast more than just a passing shadow. Paul Brand, ITV News, South Wales.
Still to come on the ITV Evening News, remembering the victims of the Shoreham air crash 1 year on.
And the pride of Britain, the grannies preparing a special welcome for their Olympic grandchildren. Those stories and more after the break. Join us then.
Welcome back. The families of 11 people killed in the Shoreham airshow disaster paused in silent tribute today to mark the first anniversary of the crash. They were joined by members of the emergency services close to the crash site in West Sussex. It was Britain's worst airshow tragedy for more than 60 years, and the families are still waiting for answers, as Neil Connery reports.
1 year on from the day their lives changed forever, the families of the victims of the Shoreham airshow disaster united to remember. On the toll bridge next to the scene of the crash, another painful step on their journey of grief. 11 people were killed when this Hawker Hunter jet crashed onto the A27 during the airshow here last August. Today, they remembered the 11 lives lost here.
Morris Abrahams, Dylan Archer, Tony Brightwell.
And then at 1:22 p.m, the time the plane crashed, a minute's silence. Among those here today, Leslie Polito, who lost her son Daniele. He was 23 and a father. The family still struggle to make sense of what happened.
That night, I knew it must be. I knew that there was no sign of him. His phone hadn't been answered. So I knew deep down it was. As it stands at the moment, we still don't know the facts. The police have done so much and they've been held back from their investigation so much by red tape.
The pilot of the jet which crashed, Andy Hill, survived. He's been questioned under caution by Sussex police but never arrested. As officers continue their inquiries, the final report from the Air Accident Investigation Branch into Shoreham is due this autumn. Amid the flowers and tributes, one simple fact remains. 1 year on, the frustrating wait for answers for the families to what caused Britain's worst airshow disaster in more than 60 years goes on. For those living with the emptiness of lives lost, the darkness which descended from that summer sky here still casts its shadow. Neil Connery, ITV News, Shoreham by Sea.
A plot to fly a large quantity of drugs into Pentonville Prison in North London using drones has been foiled. The first drone crashed as it was being tracked by police, and the second was caught by an officer in mid-flight.
And the Environment Agency has issued 14 flood warnings for parts of northwest England. These pictures are from Ingleton in North Yorkshire, where overnight rain caused flash flooding near caves in the area.
And finally tonight, nowhere is the nation's pride in our Olympic stars more deeply felt than by their family and friends. They have supported them through thick and thin, and in many cases into the early hours of the morning.
Yeah, certainly have. Team GB's achievements have been celebrated across the generations, including, of course, Olympic Nan. And as Ben Chapman reports, they're now preparing for the big return home of the heroes.
There's no better symbol of national and family pride than Mavis Williams' small bungalow. And now the woman whose supportive tweets attracted their own hashtag and made her almost as recognisable as Adam Peaty himself can't wait to welcome him home.
What are you going to do when you see him?
Give him a hug and just say, you're my legend. You know, something like that.
Have people been stopping you in the street?
Some of them have, yes. And I must admit, I have enjoyed it.
She wasn't the only grandparent up agonising until 3 in the morning. That was Siobhan Marie O'Connor's swimming silver. There were the aspiring clubmates too, a sleepover in the gym for gymnast Amy Tinkler. Then, of course, in the pub, there were those who've been there for the whole journey. Often more emotional than the athletes themselves, like Taekwondo's Jade Jones. And then there's the power to inspire. 95-year-old Doris Higgins was determined to see her granddaughter's hockey final, despite having a stroke 5 days before Sam Kwek won gold. She dedicated her win on Twitter. "Nana, that was for you. Thank you for holding on."
I couldn't believe that it happened. I wished I could speak more now of all the things that she has done in the past.
Back in Adam Peaty Street, the flags are out. There will be street parties and parades across the country, but nowhere will the welcome be warmer than where it all began. Ben Chapman, ITV News.
Got us both in tears there. That's all for now. Tom Bradby's here with news at 10.
But from this little team, a very good evening to you.
Bye-bye.